Well, we are pleased as always to bring up Congresswoman Val Hoyle to our studio, and we are really in the final month, or final weeks here, I should say, in less than a month until Election Day. Ballots are heading out soon, and people are going to be filling those out pretty quickly and sending them back. And so let's talk a little bit about the election as we kind of head right into November 5th. Let's just start with the economy. Even though inflation has come down and the labor market remains strong, a lot of working families are still struggling, and the costs of goods and services are still expensive for a lot of families in Oregon. What more needs to be done to help Oregonians afford necessities?
Yeah, I think we need to look at the fact that, yes, inflation rates have come down and interest rates have come down, but people are still having trouble affording basic goods and services, whether it's childcare or homes or food. Prices have gone up. Now, the first thing is we have to invest in strengthening our supply chain and manufacturing more things here at home. That does cost more. I have been working very hard on the expansion of the Port of Coos Bay, which will reduce our supply chain congestion and allow us to get goods and services here more quickly and for less money. But fundamentally, over the past 40 years, we've had workers not have the same kind of leverage as business. We see now over 70% of Americans support the union movement, and with the labor movement, we need to push for wages to be raised. But there are lots of good paying jobs that are right here in this district that people can't get because A, they need a different type of training, which is why I support expansion of apprenticeship and certification programs to help the 50% of jobs that need more than a high school degree and less than a college degree. And we also need more housing. People can't afford or find housing, and that is going to be critical to our workforce. So I will continue over the next 2 years, hopefully, if I earn the support of the voters here, to invest in strategies that each local community comes up with, because what works in Brookings is different than what works in Eugene.
One of the issues that's kind of involved with all of this is childcare as well.
Oh, yes.
Childcare has become so expensive, and there's a shortage of childcare providers. How can we address this rising cost and lack of availability of childcare?
So this is something that absolutely needs to be invested in. I was just at a roundtable with women small business owners, and this was one of the things they brought up, because we don't have availability of childcare. We don't have people wanting to become childcare providers because the pay is not there. And then for people who work shifts or go to work early, whether it's first responders or farmers or other people working shift work, we need to have childcare available around the clock. So things I have done previous to coming to Congress was set up an apprenticeship program for early childhood ed on the South Coast. And then previous to that, when I worked for the United Way of Lane County, we worked to train parents to become child care providers, to help upgrade their homes so that it was safe to have child care centers. And again, we have to make sure we're paying people enough to do the job, because there is no better thing that we can invest in than safe, safe and stable places for our young people to stay in while their parents are working.
Whether you're right or left, border state or not, pretty much everyone acknowledges there needs to be changes with our immigration policy and border security. How do we strengthen our security, limit drugs moving into Oregon from our southern border, and address the immigrants that are currently in our country without documentation?
So it is two-pronged, and thank you for bringing that up. We need to update our broken immigration system. We haven't done that in decades, and we haven't been able to do that because there are people who are making this issue toxic. I will point out that President Trump weighed in when we were just on the verge of passing a border security bill that would actually fund our border security Border Patrol agents. They are working with 10-year-old technology, and while the cartels are buying the latest and greatest. So we need to update the broken immigration system. We need to invest in the judges that adjudicate whether or not someone can come in for asylum or not. We need to invest in our Border Patrol and give them the tools they need, and then understand how drugs are coming over the border. The majority of fentanyl is coming over by people who can legally come across the border, whether they're American citizens or people that, you know, have the right to come over. So the critical thing is figuring out how to stop it, and there's nothing more important than we can do than investing in the technology that our Border Patrol agents can use. I'm hopeful. I have signed on to a House bill called the Dignity Act that would do both things: update our broken immigration system and our work permits, and address the dreamers who I believe should be able to stay here, and also fund our border, which is, again, critical. And I am hopeful that after this election, that Republicans and Democrats who want to see this change will be able to work together and not fall prey to someone who says, don't do what's right for America because my political opponent might get the benefit. And that's what Donald Trump did, and that is egregious in my opinion.
You're pro-choice, and you obviously support laws that legalize access to abortion. What will you do if your colleagues in Washington push for a federal ban that could ultimately overrule Oregon state laws?
Right, that is the plan. I know people have said, it's okay, Oregon laws are fine, we should have a state-by-state laws. That's ridiculous. There is no other medical procedure that you have to decide what state you're in. I mean, my daughter was pregnant and she had to decide which state she could go to, because if she had a miscarriage, there are states that would send her away, even if she needed medical care. The fact of the matter is, we were told that the protections under Roe were safe. We didn't have to worry about it. That was overturned. And now we have the same people that pushed for so many decades to overturn Roe coming after legal abortion, after mifepristone, which is, you know, one of the safest methods for early abortion. And so I will not only oppose a national ban, I will support reinstituting across the country, because women are dying in Texas, in Georgia, in Idaho. We have people coming over, women coming over who again need basic medical care. We need to reinstitute the national protections that we had under Roe, and I will fight incredibly hard to do that.
What do you say to critics who say Democrats should have already done that? We have a Democratic president. We had a Senate that at least had the tying vote in favor of the Democrats. And there have been some Republicans who have said that they would support codifying Roe v. Wade.
Right. We had a speaker who, in his conservative roadmap, you know, for Republicans, has listed defunding any kind of abortion and banning abortion nationwide. So that speaker isn't going to bring that to the floor of the House. Again, Mike Johnson is not interested in abortion being legal for any reason whatsoever. And then in the Senate, because of the filibuster, you have to have 60 senators agree that that should be brought to the floor. And we don't have 60 senators that believe that a medical decision should be between a woman and her medical provider. But that's what we need to get to, and abortion is on the ballot, not just here, but throughout the country. So Montana and Florida, conservative states, and yet the abortion ballot measures, which are rescinding the egregious limits that were passed by their legislature, those are looking like they're going to pass, because people believe, and people in the 4th District believe, that that decision should be made between a woman and her medical provider, period, end of story. And not just in our state, because that's kind of ridiculous. I know my opponent has said she believes that Oregon's fine and it should be done by the states. Well, my opponent also signed a pledge to the Constitution Party of Oregon in order to get their endorsement that has the most extreme abortion limits. No abortion for any reason whatsoever. So she may say, I'm pro-choice, I believe that Oregon's laws are fine, but either she lied to them when she signed her name with that pledge, or she's lying to us now. Either way, I'm the only one that can be trusted to actually protect women's access to basic reproductive medical care.
You mentioned housing before. There's a housing shortage. It costs too much. Certainly in Oregon, the homelessness crisis is connected to this and it persists. What is your best approach to solve these issues?
So first of all, understanding that the federal government is not the solution to everything, and that solutions need to come from the local communities. Our biggest issue in Oregon, and really across the country, but it's so severe in Oregon, is that we don't have enough housing. Talked with you about this many other times. We don't have enough housing for low-income housing, but middle-income housing. We don't even have enough high-income housing, with the majority of this district having 0.5% vacancy or less. So we don't have a place to house workforce. We don't have, affordable housing for young people to buy. So what I've done is co-sponsored, working with Senator Wyden on the DASH Act, that first of all gives tax credits to people who are building that middle-income housing as well as low-income housing. I brought $4 million to North Bend to invest in workforce housing specifically, so the people who work in North Bend can live in North Bend affordably. And we're working with each community to say, what can we do from the federal level, whether it's expanding Section 8 vouchers for low-income people, but again, doing everything we can, working with the state and local municipalities to build more housing.
Oregon also has a drug problem right now. Too many fentanyl overdoses, too much fentanyl in the state in general. You sort of address this in part with what needs to be addressed at the border, but is there more that could be done to address the drug problem at the federal level?
Right. I think the first thing we can do is actually give the Border Patrol the tools that they need to stop fentanyl from coming over the border, which again, is generally brought over by people who legally have the right to cross the border. So give them the tools. I think that people who are trafficking in fentanyl should have sentences that are very, very long, and those people should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. And then we also need to invest in public education. I know there's a number of school districts that have education to young people, saying just one time, letting them know that fentanyl can kill the first time you take it, right? So that's important. And then making sure that we're investing in treatment for those people who want it and who want to access that. Right now, we have a limited amount of treatment, especially in our more rural and coastal communities. So working with the state to make sure that the funds actually get to that is very, very important.
In foreign policy, the crisis in the Middle East keeps growing. More than a year of intense fighting in Gaza, Israel, and now Lebanon. Ukraine still in a war with Russia, more than 2.5 years since Russia invaded. What role do you think the United States should continue to take at this point in these global conflicts? So
we are a world leader, and I was very proud to vote for funding for Ukraine, allowing Russia to just go in and take Ukrainians' land. With our position in NATO, with our, supporting our European allies, I think that was really important, and I still support that. In the Middle East, it's very complicated, and anyone that thinks there's a simple solution clearly does not understand the problem. We all want the suffering to end, because the people who are suffering the most are innocent civilians who really have no sway over the people that are in charge that are continuing this war. Bottom line is, we need to use our influence to make sure hostages are released from Hamas, that there is a ceasefire, that we invest in rebuilding Palestine, that they have their own secure state, that Israel also has the right to defend themselves and has their own state. Nobody's going anywhere. Today, Joe Biden let Israel know that they will use whatever they can influence-wise in terms of giving any kind of aid. They will not be doing that if Israel continues to not let humanitarian aid into Palestine, which again is egregious. I think war crimes should be prosecuted, whoever commit them. And the fact of the matter is, it's in all of our interests to have peace in the Middle East. And it's just that the United States can't snap their fingers and make that war end, but we should use whatever influence that we can to work towards peace that allows Israel and Palestinians, certainly those in Lebanon, to live safely and securely. We also will, after this war, need to invest in a Marshall-like plan with the rest of the world and certainly the other players in the Middle East to rebuild Palestine, to make sure that people there can live in peace and prosperity.
Do you think the White House or President Biden, the Biden administration, holds responsibility for some of the damage and the destruction in Gaza and with the Palestinians?
I think that the Biden-Harris administration is doing the best they can to balance the interest that we have with our allies, with Americans still being held hostage. And again, I am glad that President Biden is now able to focus on the Middle East, and I do trust Kamala Harris to have a level head and after this election to be able to work to make sure that we have the best outcome for everyone. I don't believe that this war will be ended before the election happens. And I trust that she will be a steadier hand at the wheel than Donald Trump would be in terms of foreign policy, because she's not just focused on what's in her interest, but rather what's in the interest of our United States and our international allies.
You tout your record of working across the aisle, putting together legislation with both Democrats and Republicans, but you are a very harsh critic of former President Trump. Could you work with a second Trump administration to get things done for Oregon's 4th District? Absolutely.
I've passed more bills into law than any other freshman in the Pacific Northwest, more than most of my colleagues, Democrat or Republican. And I did that, and every single one of those bills were bipartisan. I've been able to gain the support of people in this district, Democrats, Republicans, independents, elected officials throughout the district, and from both Democrats and Republicans. I'll work with anyone to get things done for this district, as long as those people will work with me. And I'll do anything possible to work with whoever the American people elect, because that right there is the important thing. If the American people decide that they want to elect Donald Trump and he wins through the Electoral College, I will respect that. And if he doesn't, I'll respect that as well.
Last thing I'll ask is, you are hoping for a second term here. What did you learn in your first term that could make you an even better Congresswoman, in your opinion, for a second term?
So the first is developing the relationships and understanding the policy, and then understanding this district even better. We will work on, number one, the top priority in my office is constituent work. So reaching out and helping people who have issues with the federal government, with the VA, with the IRS, with whatever we can help with. So reaching more people, talking to people throughout the district, and again, understanding policy better. I am very, very hopeful that we'll be able to move forward with both private and public investment to expand the Port Coos Bay intermodal port, and then working on wildfire and timber issues. Those are still my two priorities, and I hope I get a chance to serve the people of the 4th District again, and I'm looking forward to all we can do together.
We appreciate you coming up as always and hope to continue to have these conversations about the policies. And the important thing is everybody's got to get out and vote.
Everyone, and today, you know, you have to make your plan to vote. There's information about where people can drop their ballots, where you can mail them in. Either way, sit down with the voter's pamphlet statement. That's something Oregon has that I don't know of another state that does it like we do. And people are so impressed that you can sit down and look at the voter's pamphlet statement and look at all the candidates together with information they provide. So it's not just people who can pay the big dollars to advertise on TV, like myself, like my Republican opponent, but you know, make your plan to vote and study the issues. There's a lot of local and state issues, statewide candidates, and then of course our election as well. Yeah, looking forward to Election Day.
All right, it's coming up. Thank you so much.
All right,
Congresswoman.
thank you.